Okay, so how we do this here is we have I have my subscribers, and the highest paid tier, they get to watch these being recorded. So I do.
So it's live then.
So it'll be live, but it's it's a work day, so like 5 people might tune in.
Right.
But then it's archived and they can watch it later. So do that, and then what's the other thing I wanted to tell you? Well, that's about it. Like I said, I don't know anything.
Yeah, I was here before.
Yeah. People might tune in.
Right.
So you'll teach me, and the audience will learn too. Okay, I think that's it. So here's your headphones.
I'll just do without it.
You do without them? That's fine. So that microphone is, you got to get like right up to it. You can pull it towards you. Probably easier. You sit comfortably and just pull it right up to you. And I mean, you got to like no further than this away from your mouth, like really close. Like, almost kiss it. Okay. And then let me get the...
Yeah, that's a nice chair. I'd like to sit back in.
Yeah, they're comfortable, aren't they? Yeah, so if you want to sit back, pull the microphone to you. Just there you go. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Just be comfortable. And now if I interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's because I'm trying to learn.
It's your show. Oh, I got plenty. I got plenty to get by.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody who's watching. Okay. All right. You ready, Steve?
Ready to go. Ready.
All right. Here we go. Allegedly. Allegedly, we're ready. Let's see if we are.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, high atop Baltimore Street, in a maximum security facility complete with central air, it's AG Today.
That's the wrong one.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we're talking about something that I don't really know anything about. I know it happened, and that's about it. I know the date it happened on, and I know the Confederate principles, but I don't know anything else about it. And that's why we have Steve French in here with us to talk about Martinsburg, Rhodes sacking Martinsburg, taking Martinsburg.
Yes, he did.
And that's during the Gettysburg campaign on June 14th. He does this.
Yes.
And go ahead and so for those of you at home, like last night I was going through my bookshelf at home, and I'm looking in all my Gettysburg books, and I look in the index for Martinsburg, and it was like, whether it was Trudeau or Sears or whatever it was like, oh, and Rhodes took Martinsburg.
Right.
Yeah, that was it. Not
probably the original writing of it came from Wilbur's Nye's Here Come the Rebels.
Okay.
He did a good chapter on it.
Oh, really?
And
now I have that book, and I go, that wouldn't have it. I didn't even look.
Oh, I had a good chapter on it. And then I did a book, or I did a chapter, or did an article for Gettysburg Magazine, I think in 2006, the winter of 2006, about the Battle of Martinsburg. Rob Winstra, I think, has the best chapter about it in his book, At the Forefront of Lee's Invasion by Rob Winstra, if you're familiar with that book. Won a number of awards. And then Eric Wittenberg and Scott Mingus have both written about it also. So it's, as I say, one of the most obscure fights of the Gettysburg campaign.
Right. and it's, so I was able to find just a blurb about it. I figure if I could just get a blurb, I even Googled it. And I couldn't even find a Wikipedia entry for it.
Right.
There was one, it was like civilwartalk.com or something like that. And for some reason, I'd click on the link and it was down. It's like, I'm not meant to learn about this. But
well, we'll learn about it today.
Yeah, we're going to learn about it today. But it was in Boatner's The Civil War Dictionary. That's the only place where I could find a little blurb on it. So it was enough for me to get an idea of it.
Martinsburg, get a little bit of background about Martinsburg. It was founded in the 1770s. It became a regular city or whatever, chartered in 1778 in Virginia, by a person that should be famous to most Virginians or most Pennsylvanians, Adam Stevens.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Adam Stevens?
I have not.
Okay,
I'm from New Jersey, though, to be fair.
Adam Stevens was with Washington, second in command at the skirmish of Jumonville Glen.
Okay.
And started the French and Indian War. He's at Fort Necessity with Washington. He's Indian fighter. He helps build the Forbes Road, fights at Fort Ligonier. That's all in the French and Indian War. And later on, during the Revolution, 20 years later, he's Major General of the Virginia Division until the Battle of Germantown. And at Germantown, a lot of the generals come in for complaints and from Washington, and he is court-martialed, but the only charge they get him on, it was drunkenness. So whether that was true or whether Washington wanted him pushed out of the way for Lafayette. Lafayette is in the wings.
Okay.
And he founds the city. The city is called the Northern Gateway to the Shenandoah Valley. It's about 12 miles from the crossing at Williamsport. And over the years, it was a farming community, but in 1842, the B&O Railroad comes through there. And it's about 100 miles from Baltimore. So shops are built, a roundhouse is built, so it becomes an important part of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad system. In the Civil War, Thomas Jackson at that time, Colonel Thomas Jackson, he is going to destroy a lot of railroad property, a lot of locomotives, over 300 train cars, and so on, in Martinsburg on June the 20th, 1861. Okay. So a town that you would think would be Southern, which the old families were.
Right.
But the new families coming in, the Irish, they depended on that railroad. Okay. So it's called by some of the some of the Confederates the worst Union hole in Virginia, or it's full of abolitionists, and they would prove that throughout the war, even though they had three infantry, the Berkeley Border Guards and the 2nd Virginia Infantry. They had artillery unit and also a cavalry company coming from the town. A lot of the men there went across the river to join Maryland units.
Okay.
A lot of them stayed around to spy. A lot of them, like a person I've always been interested in, Thomas Noakes, became guides. They worked for pay for the Union Army. They didn't sign up. It was better.
Yeah.
And he helped lead the escape from Harper's Ferry. And one of those. But it was a town. It was important because of that railroad and because of it was close to the Potomac crossings at Williamsport.
So, speaking of where it is, today, if you drive down 81, you go right past it. It is northish of Winchester.
Right, about 20 miles away.
Just south of Falling Waters.
Right.
And was that like northwest? A little bit northwest of Harper's Ferry.
Right.
And Charlestown. So if you get, just to put a picture in your head, if you're not looking at a map.
One of the fastest growing areas in the United States now.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually, a friend of mine just moved there, and I've been through it on 81, but I've never actually gotten off 81 and gone and checked it out.
Friend of mine's he was a millionaire. He started out with a little construction company, but not long ago, I was with him, and he got a call from Texas, and he had been developing some properties from townhomes, and what did he sold 72 quarter-acre lots at $68,000 a piece.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got to get into real estate.
Yeah.
What are we doing in this history thing? We need to get into real
there's
estate.
no money here.
No, there isn't. So, okay. So, Early is taking his second corps north. I'm sorry, Ewell. Thank you. Ewell is taking his second corps north into Maryland and Pennsylvania. Right. He's the lead corps. Rhodes being sent ahead to Martinsburg. Right. That makes him the tip of the spear, as you say.
Now they're going to meet in near Front Royal, just north of Front Royal, at Cedarville, on June the 12th, and he will meet with Johnson, Early, and Rhodes, and explain the campaign to them as Johnson and Early are to take Winchester. Ewell will be with them. Rhodes is given the assignment of taking his division and marching on a small town to the east, about 6 or 7 miles to the east of Winchester, called Berryville. And that was an outpost commanded by Colonel Andrew McReynolds of the 1st New York Cavalry. And so, he had some infantry and so on there. I forget, 1,400 men. But they're an outpost, really guerrilla fighters. They're hunting the guerrilla, Mosby and all that crew, Andrew Leopold, that were down in that section. So he's to take Berryville and then swing towards the Valley Pike and try to cut off that group so they can't get back to Winchester. And then swing towards the Valley Pike and march to Martinsburg, where you have going to have about 1,200 Federals there guarding that town, and take it. And Ewell is going to give him, for his cavalry, Alfred Jenkins' brigade, and they're totally unfamiliar with the area.
Right.
Now, this campaign will put them familiar with this area. They'll be back the next year to burn Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Right. But they're totally unfamiliar. I guess they had guides, but you'll see in Rhodes' report, he doesn't understand why they couldn't get this done. And they're from the Kanawha Valley, the Huntington area, now what's the Huntington area, southwestern Virginia. So they're unfamiliar with this area. Plus, their artillery hasn't caught up with them yet. Now, he has the 14th, 16th, and 17th Virginia Cavalry. He has the 34th Virginia Battalion under Witcher, Vincent Clawhammer Witcher, and the 36th Battalion of Virginia Cavalry under Major McSweeney. So he has roughly about 1,600 men. But the 16th will stay with Early.
Okay.
They'll stay with Early. So he gets his orders, Rhodes, and tells Jenkins, meets with him, tells him exactly what he wants him to do. And they want to surprise Berryville and capture the soldiers there. But the screen that Jenkins put up is not very effective. And a cavalry patrol coming back from the Shenandoah River will spot Rhodes heading towards Berryville. So that patrol will get back and tell McReynolds. McReynolds has orders, if he hears signal shots from Winchester, cannon fire, he's supposed to get there. He knows what the signal will be. So as Jenkins comes towards, this would be on the 13th. As Jenkins comes towards Berryville early in the morning, McReynolds has already started pulling out. But Jenkins doesn't know that.
Okay.
There'll be some skirmishing there and not very effective for either side, except for, I guess, for the Federals, the rear guard keeps them out.
Right.
McReynolds has, and this is important, especially in later on the Gettysburg campaign, once they're into Pennsylvania, McReynolds has as headquarters wagons, his regimental wagons, supply wagons. He wants to get them across the river. And also he has the 1st New York Cavalry supply train. So he pulls out and takes his men, except for rear guard, on a roundabout way towards Winchester. They're going first north, and then they're going to circle back when they get to a place called Brucetown on the valley, near the Valley Pike. They're going to circle back south.
Okay.
The wagon train's going to head due north towards Martinsburg.
Okay.
They're going to stop at a place called Bunker Hill later on. When Rhodes gets to Berryville, he finds it's only protected by a small rear guard. He'll just deploy his men, his brigades, and they'll take the town and drive the rear guard off. Plenty of supplies are left behind. That's what they're looking for, and just a lot of stuff, hot food and everything.
Right.
They're right in there, what they want. So, so he meets with Jenkins again. Get on their trail. Get on the trail. So Jenkins takes off. And later on, he will have to split because, as I said, the wagon train continues north. So Jenkins, the 14th and the 17th and the 34th battalions, they'll keep heading north towards a place called Bunker Hill. We'll take the 36th. The 36th will follow the rear guard, which is made up mostly of some infantry, but mostly some tough fighters from the 1st New York Cavalry. And then along the Opequon Creek in a place called Locks Ford, there's a terrific fight, a terrific cavalry fight. You don't think of Jenkins' men having that they're basically foot or infantry,
right,
and
mounted
horse
infantry.
cavalry.
Yeah,
but you're thinking them, they're not like Stuarts, but in this case they are. There's a terrific saber fight in the middle of that stream, and McSweeney is injured seriously, and they have to back off. They're the 1st New York Cavalry Company that's there beat them back, and then they'll all continue in towards Winchester, which they'll be there during especially the fighting of the Battle of Stevenson Depot when Milroy. And that's one thing we can mention now. The Confederates wanted Milroy bad. He was one of the most wanted people in the Shenandoah Valley, probably the most wanted as far as, and they wanted to take him to Richmond and put him on trial for things he had done in the mountains of West Virginia.
Not a very well-liked guy.
They called him Spoons Milroy, remember? Because they said his wife took the spoons out of the silver spoons. Maybe she did. Maybe we'll have to ask Jonathan North.
Alice, yeah.
He'll know.
Yeah.
But so, picking back up, the fight there at Locks Ford's over. The 36 kind of trails this retreating rear guard to Winchester. So, Lieutenant Frank Martindale of the 1st New York Cavalry is leading the wagon train. The idea is to get that wagon train to Martinsburg and get it across the river, get it to safety. He's formed a rear guard behind the wagon train, and you'll have skirmishing all the way up the road. The wagon train gets to Bunker Hill. Now, Bunker Hill is about 10 miles from Martinsburg, 10 miles from Winchester. Right in the middle.
Right.
It's named for the Revolutionary War.
I've
battle.
always wondered that. Yeah. Okay.
And it's an unincorporated village even today, even though it's kind of a big place. 200 soldiers there, under the 2 companies from the 87th Pennsylvania Infantry, and 2 companies from the 116th Ohio. They're to guard what was called the Smithfield Road, going towards Charlestown. And they're also guarding the Valley Pike. They have fences up on both pikes, about 200 men. Major Morse is commanding. The wagons are parked. The wagons include a civilian that's along with her children in a carriage. Captain William Boyd from the 1st New York Cavalry has sent his young wife and 2 young get out of town. You know, you're on the you get in this carriage and get out of town.
Right.
She's there, and plus one of his older sons, William Boyd, is there too. He's in charge of the regiment or the regimental train. They're parked, and all of a sudden, Galloper comes in. Get on the way. They're right behind us, and they can start hearing gunfire. So down the road they go. Mrs. Boyd upsets the carriage, sprains her ankle. She's going to end up in Richmond with the kids. Why they sent her, I don't know, but she does end up there before she's released. But the Morse sends his men out towards the Peckin Creek where they have defensive positions. This would be east of town.
That's interesting, though. You pronounce it Peckin.
Right.
Okay. I always thought it was Apaquan.
Oh, that's what they say in West Virginia.
They do. Okay, so that's how they say it down there. All right, well, when in Rome, right?
And there's a steep hill down to the creek where and a bridge that the road to Smithfield passes over. But there's a terrific firefight there. Finally, Jenkins pushes across the creek and on captures or total of 90 federal casualties out of the 100 or 200 men. But the Federals under Major Morse will take positions in 2 churches that they have fortified. Now remember, Jenkins has no cannon. So they're trapped in there. It's skirmishing a little bit, but they can't shoot through the walls. And he gets a local, I think it was Ward Hill Lemon's cousin. It's one of the Lemons, or sometimes they pronounce Lemon, but in West Virginia it's always Lemon. And he sends him in with surrender terms. Morse tells him, we're not into that kind of business.
Yeah.
We'll stay here. A thunderstorm comes along during the night, though, and Morse is able to lead his men out, even though they must have been surrounded.
Right.
And they escape, and they'll end up in Winchester the next day.
Okay.
They walk out. And, of course, the next morning is the 14th, and they have plenty of food there. Mm-hmm. So they take their time. There's this daylight. They take their time, get plenty to eat. There's plenty of weapons left behind. He's lost probably about 6 men, 2 killed and 4 wounded in the fight. But they have some prisoners and also dead Federals. And but then they're going to head to Martinsburg. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what's going on in Martinsburg? A few days before, I think Don Pyatt, Colonel Don Pyatt, P-I-A-T-T. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but he comes from Baltimore with orders from the commander of the 8th Corps there, Middle Department, fighting Bob Schenck. Now, that was one of Ed Bars's favorites. He always made sure you said fighting Bob. and he comes up and says, be ready to move everything out of Martinsburg.
Okay.
We got this supply depot. And so the commander there is Colonel B.F. Smith of the 126th Ohio. He has about 8 companies there, 7 in the town, guarding the town, and then 1 guarding a railroad bridge on the Peckin about 2 miles from Martinsburg. So he starts moving supplies by train. The trains are still running. And he also sends a messenger to North Mountain Depot, which is near Hedgesville, West Virginia. It's about 5 miles away. And he tells Colonel Edward James of the 106th New York,
okay,
come to Martinsburg. We need you in here. So James will leave on the evening of the 13th, and he'll arrive in Martinsburg.
And where was he?
He's about 5 miles northwest of there, near Hedgesville, a place called North Mountain Depot.
Okay. Near Hedges. Oh, there it is. I see it. Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
And he marches in, leaves a few of the sick behind with the doctor. And so Smith has, on the morning of the 14th, which is the day of the battle, he has about 1,200 men between James's 106 and his own 126. Plus, he has Captain William Farley's Company B of the 1st Potomac Home Brigade Cavalry.
Okay.
They're there also. And a couple other miscellaneous little cavalry units, and also the Virginia Unionists who are in town. So, 8 o'clock on the morning of the 14th, gunfire is heard south of town. Probably about 2 or 3 miles south of town, the vedettes ride in. At the same time, at the station, Brigadier General Daniel Tyler, who's 64 years old, he shows up with his son, E.L., I think he's Tyler, and Max Woodall, he's aides. He has orders from Fighting Bob, go to the relief of Winchester if possible.
Okay.
Or not get out of there.
Okay.
Get out of there.
Right.
But he is there to take, he is supposed to take command. But when he arrives, everything's in a big uproar. Smith is getting ready to march out to meet the enemy. He also has a 6-gun battery there, Captain William Malsby. It's from a West Virginia battery from, I think, Fairmont. And Tyler decides, I'm not going to take command. We are already, the action is already
Something's
started.
going on, yeah.
And he doesn't tell Smith why he's there. You know, General, why am I here? You know, General, why are you here?
Yeah.
No one asked. You know, he says, I'm headed out. And Smith says he's headed out. Tyler says, I'll stay in town, and we got to get this wagon train out of here.
Right.
So Smith will go out, and in the next hour, it'll become fairly heavy skirmishing about a mile south of town near a place called Big Spring. It was a favorite camping spot south of Martinsburg.
Okay.
Even in Revolutionary War time, Braddock's army camped at Big Spring.
All right. Is it still called that today?
Yes,
Okay.
but it's 1 mile south of town. There's no
It's not marked on
village
the
or
map.
anything
Okay,
there.
gotcha.
It's sort of like a small lake.
Oh, okay. I see one.
And so the fighting, Jenkins is coming up. The forward units of Jenkins' fighting starts. Smith will march about a mile out of town. He'll set his regiment up behind these large stone boulders, and they're still there, that mark the property.
Okay.
The boulders are still there today. He'll put it, that's on the east side of the Valley Pike. On the west, he'll put James's men, except for one company, and he'll advance the 6 guns. So you have this, I guess they would call desultory skirmishing, light skirmishing going on for about an hour. And finally, Captain William Boyd shows up with about 30 men. He's been sent by Milroy from Winchester
Okay.
to tell them Winchester is invested. Don't come. Don't come.
Okay.
He finds out that the wagon train is there. So he's going to ride on into Martinsburg and take over the wagon train. And that's when he finds out, well, his wife's not there. She's down south. And he's going to take over from Martindale, and he's going to leave Martindale behind.
Okay.
And Captain Boyd, of course, is the one that will bring the wagon train across the Potomac, through Williamsport, Hagerstown, and on up through Chambersburg. It'll be to Harrisburg. I guess they took it. I believe that they got as far as Chambersburg, but it went on. Did they go on to Harrisburg? Maybe.
I don't know. Let me see if Boatner says anything about that. Go ahead.
But so the fighting goes on. It gets a little bit heavier around 11 o'clock, and suddenly a rider comes in. His whole Confederate rider has come in, His horse is bolted, and he's captured. And he's a major, and they question him. Smith questioned him, and he's telling him, we'll have 10 to 20,000 men here by this evening. We're going, this is it.
Right.
We're going to roll right over top of you.
Yeah.
And Smith at first doesn't believe him, says it's probably a little bit too high, but he knows something's coming up.
Yeah.
So
He'll at least be outnumbered.
he will.
He knows
by
that.
far.
Yeah.
So what he decides to do is disengage, and he will march his men east about a half mile to a mile and take a position on a large ridge called, sometimes it's called Shires Hill, but some of the Federals refer to it as Union Hill.
Got it.
And he takes position. He puts 4 of the cannon facing south. He puts 2 facing towards the west. He puts skirmishers from the 126th Ohio. They're commanded now by Lieutenant Colonel Harlan. He'll put them in the fields and woods of Boydville, which is a plantation house that was owned by a lady called Mary Boyd Faulkner, who was married to Charles James Faulkner, the Buchanan's minister to France, and also a person who wrote many of Stonewall Jackson's battle reports.
Oh, okay.
And so they're spread out. Most of the soldiers, however, stay on top of the hill in cover.
Right.
The idea is get the wagon train to Williamsport, and then once we know they're in Williamsport, we're going to get out of here. We'll go to Williamsport also. So, what's Rhodes doing? Rhodes' men on a hot march. It's about 18 miles from Berryville. Well, they march a little bit past Berryville. Maybe they went as far as Summit Point.
Okay.
That evening. But it's about 18 miles. They're going to march to Martinsburg. Now, when they get on the back roads, they're okay. Most of them don't have any shoes, but they're still okay. When they get on the Valley Pike, though, it's macadamized.
Right.
And it causes a lot of problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they start falling by the wayside, and it's hot and sticky, and they start falling out. So this is going on. Rhodes will ride in, and towards that late afternoon, and he'll ask Jenkins, "What have you done?" Jenkins said, "Well, a while ago, I sent in a demand to Colonel Smith to surrender, or I'll open fire with my artillery." Well, he doesn't have any artillery.
Right.
So he had sent probably about 1:30 or 2 o'clock. He had sent in this demand, and Smith told him he didn't care. He could go ahead and start. He would send the word to the town if they wanted to leave, and a lot of people were leaving.
I bet they were.
And they were getting out of there. And Smith said, "No, we're not going to do that. You go ahead and fight." And so that afternoon, you just have every so often the Federals would see a couple of riders out there, and they'd try to pick them off with a cannon. That's all you had going on afternoon. So Rhodes shows up, a person that D.S. Freeman called a Norse god in a Confederate uniform. That's from Lee's lieutenant, a Norse god in a Confederate uniform. And he's showing up, but he's going to have artillery. He has 16 guns of Carter's battalion. And he will show up. And it takes a while because he has approximately 8,500 men.
Okay.
And headed that way. And so finally, towards the evening, out in the area around Big Springs, he's going to deploy his men. He's going to put Carter's battalion up on the hilltops so they have about a 3/4 mile shot into this area. And then O'Neill and the Alabama Brigade will be on the east side. And who do I have here? Doles, Iverson, and Ramseur.
Mm-hmm.
They're spread out, getting ready to go. So about 6 o'clock, or it's getting here comes a rider in from Williamsport. We're across the river.
Right.
We're across the river. Now, where is Tyler? Tyler still hasn't taken command, even though they're set up. It's been a set-piece battle now,
Mm-hmm.
and Tyler's the brigadier general. Tyler has been interested in artillery because that's what he was interested in when he was in the Army.
Okay.
Years before, after West Point, he was interested in artillery.
Okay.
So he's out there with the gunners, directing them.
Okay.
Shoot, there's some rebels over there. Take a shot at them, and he's over there. So Smith is going to tell his soldiers. At first, he's going to tell Lieutenant Colonel Harlan, so we're going to pull off this hill, but we're not going to Williamsport, because by that time, Rhodes had sent Jenkins to the west of Martinsburg, and they were going to try to cut off that road.
Right.
Jenkins, and he was fighting Captain Martindale, Captain Fiery. They were fighting out on the ridges, right where 81 passes by Martinsburg.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
where the fighting is going on. So
Where the Holiday Inn is?
where the Holiday Inn is, that on that hill, Red Hill. That's
All right.
where they're fighting.
Yeah, okay.
And so Jenkins is out there, and so Smith tells Harlan, we are going to Shepherdstown, and then we're going to cross the Potomac, and then we'll march to Harper's Ferry.
So they're going
They're going to go
Shepherdstown, up into Maryland, down across from Harper's Ferry, and then to Harper's Ferry.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going to take the canal.
Yeah.
They're going to
Yeah.
cross at Packhorse Ford,
Right.
and take the canal.
Just to put the river between them and Rhodes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tyler doesn't know that. He's out with the artillery.
Oh, right.
Okay? The four guns that are facing south are down lower. They can't see what's going on top of the hill.
Okay.
They can't see it all. Now, there are two guns on top of the hill, but with Lieutenant Herr, and they see everything going on. So probably they say as the sun sets behind North Mountain to the west. So we're talking, what time's it setting here? 7:30 or 7:30 something. It would be this time
Back
of
then,
year.
yeah, because they don't have the
Slow
daylight
time.
savings. Yeah.
Let's say 7:30. The sun, 7:30. The sun's going down. Just at that time, well, just a second. Just before the fighting starts, the main battle, they say Eugene Blackford, who was commanding Rhodes' sharpshooters, he says a beautiful woman rode out from town and met with Rhodes and showed him how to sweep around the town.
Ah.
Now, who was that? It's hard to say. But one person that had been with them in Front Royal was Belle Boyd. She was headed back town. Martinsburg was her hometown.
Okay.
And she doesn't write about it in her book, though.
Uh-huh.
But she's going to be in Martinsburg from that day on until sometime in August when she's arrested and put in prison.
Now, is she, I'm assuming, has something to do with Boydville?
No,
No?
it's a different family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a different family.
But both
they're-
in Martinsburg.
and her dad's house was within 300 feet of Boydville.
Oh.
Of the entrance of
Okay.
Boydville, and her father's house is just a little bit north of there, about 300 feet. It's not there anymore, but it was right on the almost right on the sidewalk where Boydville is this big mansion plus 300 acres. So Rhodes gives the order to Carter this terrific barrage starts just as the 126 is leaving.
Mm-hmm.
People hitting the ground, horses going everywhere, down, unmanageable, and it's complete confusion. One of the doctors, Dr. Skinner, hits the ground, and he said later he was scared to death, but the scene was so ludicrous of people just losing their minds because there's 16 guns opened up on that hilltop,
Sure.
and they were hitting. And you have this one, the 126 Ohio. It marches away, marches down on the hill, crosses Tuscarora Creek. It goes down around Green Hill where the cemetery is, and it disappears. They're headed for Shepherdstown.
Okay.
No one knows where they're going.
So they're going without orders? They're just going on their own, or
They had been ordered.
okay.
Now, some of them are skirmishers. They're still out in front, but the balance of the regiment is headed to Shepherdstown under Smith's orders. Tyler, of course, this is going on. And Smith, they're going. They've left. And James, it's time to get out of here. and he meets with Tyler, and Tyler sends Woodall trying to find. Did they go to Williamsport? Which way to go? And Woodall comes back and said they're not going that way; they're going the other way. And the barrage continues. So Lieutenant Herr is looking towards the west. He's shooting towards the west. And he says, it's time to get out of here. He tells his men, we're going to leave. They get one cannon off the hill. But as they're going down the hill, another gets stuck. And they try to free it. And it gets away from them and it goes into a ravine.
Okay.
So they're going to leave that.
Done.
They're going to get out of there. So James then is going to meet with Tyler, and Tyler heading for Shepherdstown. Follow. Tyler, in the meantime, goes back. He's still out on the hill with the cannon and some skirmishers, and he tells Malsby, fire 3 or 4 shots from each gun, and then gets out of here. Well, Malsby thinks, I'm going to Williamsport, and he does. Once he gets off the hill, he's going to head through town and towards Williamsport.
Okay.
Tyler is going to head towards Shepherdstown, and when he meets with Smith, he'll take command.
Okay.
He takes command at that point. So the battle's still raging. Rhodes sends messages to the infantry, charge. Right. And the people in town said such a roar was never heard. This is from a mile away. When they take off, headed to march into Martinsburg, just a roar, a rebel yell. It's just unbelievable. And Ramseur will try to catch up with the units going to Williamsport. But Jenkins, of course, on horseback, they got the jump on him, and they're headed out to, from the road going to Williamsport. Now, Jenkins is with one of the most interesting individuals in the Civil War.
Okay.
16-year-old Cooney Ricketts.
Cooney Ricketts.
What
a name.
He's from a rich family
Yeah.
near the Ohio River.
Okay.
And when he was 14, he ran away from home to join General Jenkins.
Huh.
They took him back. He told them he was going to run away again. And they finally said, General Jenkins, if you'll watch him,
he can
go.
Yeah.
And he's in these ambushes and things like that. He's always with Jenkins. So Jenkins is leading, I think it's the 17th. They're right behind him. Jenkins is in front, Cooney Ricketts behind him. Outside of town, Jenkins's horse goes down with a bullet. He's down on the ground. Riders come up. He says, follow that boy. Cooney Ricketts gets into the Federal batteries, shoots a couple people, couple soldiers, and then he doesn't have a saber.
Uh-huh.
He gets in, his gun is empty, pistol's empty, and of course one of the battery officers, are trying to knock him off the horse with the saber, and he checks the fight with the saber.
Jesus. Holding the pistol.
Now, he's cut up a little bit.
I bet he is.
but Cooney Rickett, the boy soldier of the regiment, after the Gettysburg campaign, he'll be all through the Gettysburg campaign.
Yeah.
They said, it's time to get you out the way where you're safe.
Right.
And they sent him to VMI. And he's in the Battle of Newmarket.
Oh, geez.
But he had an interesting career, and he may have had a little PTSD after the
I'm
war.
sure he did. How old was he?
He was 14 when he joined, and he was 16 at the Battle of Martinsburg.
Wow.
In the Gettysburg campain.
I mean, they were made from different stock back then.
He ran away. He said you could, if you watch him, you can have him.
Wow.
So
Cooney Ricketts.
Cooney Ricketts.
I've never heard that name before.
Lucian. It's Lucian or En. Lucian. And then he nicknamed him Cooney.
Okay.
But I guess he was a great coon hunter.
Right.
Home.
Probably.
And so the Federals get out of town. They don't leave much behind. A lot of grain that they tried to set on fire, and some artillery ammunition, some food, and things like that. But as they're going through town, you have Southern sympathizers coming out and hugging and kissing them and so on. And one of the diarists of Martinsburg said, she just couldn't believe it. And our boys are finally back. I could see them marching up the hill. But the balance of the women in Martinsburg despised the Confederates.
Okay.
Some of them, the wives of railroad workers. That railroad's been out of business a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're cursing the Confederates, throwing stuff at them. The Federals had girlfriends in town. They're trying to hide their boyfriends.
Right.
And the Confederates are going into the houses and pulling them out.
Okay.
And of course they're coming under torrents of abuse. and they never heard ladies talk like that. They're from the deep south.
Right.
And but they and I forgot about the fight out on north of town with Cooney Ricketts is involved in. They capture 4 artillery pieces there. Malsby is shot in the knee, but he is able to escape. They keep that's going to keep him out of the rest of the war.
All right.
But they bring these back to town, so they've captured 5 cannon, some artillery ammunition, some small arms, a lot of grain, and the women of the town, the Southern women, they give them as much food as they possibly can, and the Northern women throw stuff at them and curse them, and the men all try to hide.
Yeah.
But that's when you get this. This is the first time I guess most of Rhodes' men had been through this part. They may have been some of them during the Gettysburg or Antietam, but they probably went across at the Pack Horse Ford and went towards Winchester rather than going through Martinsburg. And they didn't know what it was like. They thought they were in Virginia.
Yeah.
And they weren't.
Yeah.
It's funny about Berkeley County. Little villages just a mile from one another. One village would be totally Confederate. The other village would be totally Union. And both of them had spies. Both the villages would have spies.
Of course they did. But how did that work within the same, like in Martinsburg, you have women who are pro-South, you have women who are pro-North, they have Northern boyfriends they're trying to hide and everything. Mm-hmm. Is there any, do you, off the top of your head, do you have any stories of the civilians kind of pulling stuff with each other?
Well, I mentioned a man named Thomas Noakes.
Uh-huh.
And he's a mysterious character. He was a scout, he was a spy, and he was a guide, but always for pay.
Yeah, of course.
Gold.
Yeah,
Gold.
yeah.
And one time, the Confederates, small group of the Confederates that rode into town, and they installed the former sheriff.
Okay.
And the sheriff gets up and starts making a speech. And Noakes grabs him and slaps him and throws him to the ground and said, "Get back where you're coming from." And one of McNeil's men one time...
Is that McNeil's Rangers?
Rangers,
Yeah.
and later on, this in '64, he's riding through the town, and his uncle is a merchant there, and they came in, and all of a sudden, the Confederate cavalry is there, and or Union cavalry is there, and they're chasing him through the town, and as he turns along one of the main streets to get to the Valley Pike, his horse slips, and the kids come out. Run, the Yankees are coming. But it was a town, after that burning by Jackson, that changed a lot of things. Before that, they got on each other's nerves, but...
so that was what turned them in the majority.
That's before that, I would guess most of the newcomers, and I'm talking newcomers of the last 10 to 15 years, they didn't care.
Yeah.
That they were there to work.
Yeah.
But when their job was on the line.
Yeah. Well, so what is it about West Virginia in general, about those counties, that made them not want to go with the Confederacy?
Well, you had the newcomers with the railroad. You had a lot of German, like my family was German.
Okay.
Now, we had one who joined the Potomac Home Brigade, and he's going to be killed at Gettysburg on Culp's Hill.
What was his name?
Teeter French, Teter. He's buried in the cemetery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's in the Maryland plot.
So French is the German name?
Yes, it's from what's called the Palatine, that border along the Rhine River, and I guess they were really
they were probably French, and the Germans when they had it, they go, well, they're French. Yeah, okay.
And where you had German people in West Virginia, it seemed, the old stock seemed like they were more pro-Union. I know the next county to the west is Morgan County.
Yeah.
In the southern part of Morgan County, they're all Confederate. In the rest of Morgan County, they're all Union. They had a lot of Swiss and German families.
Okay.
There.
Okay.
But that's and they didn't get along. I mean, they didn't. After the war, you had a lot of court cases where here you're a Confederate raider. Well, now you're in circuit court. Mr. Jones said, "You stole my horse. You can't say anything because you're not allowed to talk. You can't defend yourself in court." Okay.
Yeah.
You can't say my Turner Ashby told me to do that.
Right.
That didn't make any difference.
And did Virginia, after the war, try to sue West Virginia for back taxes for the roads that Virginia built prior to the war? Or something like that?
All improvements.
All the improvements, yeah.
Or internal improvements. A lot of it, I think, was over the insane asylum at Weston.
Oh.
Virginia had spent a lot of money, and it was one of the biggest stone-cut buildings in the world. If you've ever been to Weston, they have a lot of paranormal
of
activities
course they
there.
do. Is that Weston, O-N or I-N?
O-N.
Okay, Weston.
And that was a big public works project from Virginia. Virginia sponsored to create jobs in that area.
Okay. Oh, yeah, look at that building. That's spooky.
And they wanted the money back, and they got a lot of it back.
Okay.
West Virginia had to pay... I forget how many millions, when a million counted for something, but over a course of years. I think it was in the late 30s before they paid the bonds off.
Okay.
And
so they did have to actually pay.
Yes, they did.
See, I think that's I would say, if I were the judge, I would say, well, Virginia, you decided you want to be part of the United States, and these counties did. And so, too bad, so sad. Move on.
Well, by that time, I forget what year it was decided, but by that time you might have had, well, it went to the Supreme Court. I don't know how many Democrats were on the Supreme Court then.
Okay.
That might
that might have been it.
And, of course, there's all kinds of difficulties. Jefferson County really wanted to go back to Virginia, and they included Berkeley in the suit. Berkeley really didn't want to go back to Virginia, and it was close. It was 6-3. It was in the Supreme Court twice, 6-3 for West Virginia, but. Really, those counties were kept in West Virginia because the B&O Railroad ran through there.
Okay.
B&O Railroad did not want to go back to that company. Did not want to be associated with Virginia after Virginia cost them millions of dollars.
Yeah. I don't blame them. I wouldn't either.
But Rhodes will send Jenkins to Williamsport. He'll arrive there on the 15th, and then he'll continue after that wagon train, and he'll come up as far as Chambersburg and threaten to burn the town then.
Right.
If they don't turn their guns in, and the people do turn most of their weapons in. And it's right around that time. Some of Jenkins's men or civilians along with him killed a local farmer named Isaac Straight.
Okay.
They were trying to find out where he kept his money, and he wouldn't tell them.
So they killed him so that they ensured that they'll never find out. Would they ransack the place and find it?
They ransacked the house. They also took the corpse and stuck it upside down in a manure pile.
Jesus.
And it put the daughter of the family lost her mind.
Of course she did.
That was it.
Yeah, that would make anybody lose their mind seeing their father treated that way.
But that wasn't Southern chivalry,
No, it wasn't. No.
Jenkins was all right. He was an ex-congressman, U.S. congressman. I think he'd been educated at Harvard.
Okay.
He's known for that long
beard that he tucked into his.
And also now he's a friend of Cooney Ricketts.
Yeah, Cooney Ricketts. Who knew? Took care of Cooney.
Yeah, follow that boy.
So, we have a common or a mutual friend, Cameron Mallow, and he's very interested in the swamp dragons.
Yes.
Were they a big deal in West Virginia, or is Cameron kind of just honing in on this and blowing it out of proportion?
Where they were a big deal.
Okay.
Because they were the only counterbalance to these Confederate raiders that would come up through the mountain valleys stealing livestock.
Okay.
And looking for Federals.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes they were looking for local office holders so they could take back to Richmond and put them on trial.
Put them on trial.
Put them on trial.
Oh, right, because Virginia. Yeah.
And the swamp dragons are the people in these home guard companies. That was the only protection they had. They had the band together.
Uh-huh.
And they did.
Right. And so they weren't officially a part of the United States Army or volunteer service. They were like a guerrilla band.
No, they were home guards, what they called. And then
would they have been in uniform?
They had uniforms.
They did, okay.
Yeah. West Virginia, in 1864, I believe, you'd have to ask Cameron to be sure, West Virginia took them in as into the regular service, and then they supplied weapons and whatever they needed from what's called Kaiser today, but then it was called New Creek Depot. That was a supply center, and the swamp dragon companies would go there to get resupplied. Okay. So they're a counterbalance to these, like McNeil or the Harper brothers or some of these Confederate bushwhackers. That's your counterbalance. Okay. You get sort of like in Vietnam, I think they would give tribesmen, the U.S. would give tribesmen weapons and train them. So they counterbalance. You keep these people off our back, keep these people away from New Creek. Right. And or tell us at least they're on the way. Yeah. And towards the end, I mean, it was always violent. War was violent, but towards the end of the war, you're getting in the mountains of central West Virginia and Alleghenies, you're getting more like Missouri.
Okay, so well, because it's rugged country. It's hard to maneuver armies in there, so you got to go with the small bands.
There's a man named Van Dever, who rides with McNeil towards the end of the war. He's something like the outlaw Josie Wales.
Oh, right.
Okay, what happened to your prisoners? They tried to escape. Huh? And even though he's paroled at the end of the war, he heads west for 8 years.
Yeah, right, okay.
And then comes back and becomes a horse doctor in Millwood, Virginia. But there was in Berkeley and Jefferson County, right there along the river, you had some of that people showing up. Someone finds them in the woods or something. My father said, and I've never been able to prove or disprove it because the diary from where we live starts in July 1861. So, but he always said at the beginning of the war, there was, I don't know whether it was a Confederate or Union man, civilian, was lynched near where we lived.
Okay.
And he pointed out it was right there. Well, his grandmother told him that.
Yeah,
so
right.
It was probably right.
Right.
But there's no fact who did it. No.
Right. Yeah.
Or who was it?
Yeah, there's no record of it.
No.
Just family lore.
But I found out that I did publish a diary near my home. It's covered all 4 years, but starts in July 1861, ends in May of 1865. But in that diary, I found out that a lot of the stories older people told me, now these people would be 120, 125 years old now if they're still around, were true. Because their great aunts had told, I used to bake bread, and these guys would come down for the fort. They could smell it, and they'd take everything off. That was Union.
Right.
That was Union guys. But a lot of these stories that the people who were old when I was young would tell me, and they really didn't pay any attention. They didn't say, well, who was that? Or they'd say, Mom told me this. Or,
Right. They weren't doing it for the benefit of American history as much as it was for local
history. Just keep local stories going.
Right.
But I found when I did this diary for, it was a local man who's, he was about 21 when the war started. His brothers were with Stonewall Jackson, and he was running a mill, so he didn't have to go into the service.
Okay.
He was exempt.
Because he was needed.
And he kept a good diary the whole time, and it's about going to church, and here comes McCausland's Raiders. Here they are. Well, I'm Southern too.
Yeah, right. I think that's nice about, because I'm from New Jersey, and New Jersey is a very transient state. At least North Jersey, as far as I can understand it, is a lot of people in the early 1900s, immigrated into New York. A lot of them stayed in New York. But some of them spread out and came into Jersey. Their children or the grandchildren would be the first generation to finally say, enough with this stupid city. Let's move into North Jersey, because it's like back then it was like the country.
Yeah, countryside.
But the, like where I grew up, the town I grew up in was a place that you moved to because it had good schools, and it was at the intersection of two interstates. And when your kids were moved or were done, with school, you sold the house and you moved somewhere cheaper, nicer, quieter, and that, so like there's not that sense of tradition and history and place. There's no character to it, or there is a character, but I just don't like the character. But there is in that sense, like I can't go talk to an old timer that was, well, Parsippany back in the day, like no, there was nobody there that did that. And if they did, there was nothing to it. So I like that about, talking to Cameron, and I mean, he loves West Virginia.
Right.
And he's
deep into West Virginia. I'm on the edge. He's deep.
Oh, he's in there. Yeah. But I think he considers West Virginian a completely different species of people. Like, not of people, a different species. You know, like they're not people; they're a different thing. And he, or at least he thinks of them as a different race. Because you know, you make a joke about West Virginia, and he wants to kill you. You know, but I think there's a charm to that too, because. To live somewhere that has a sense of history and tradition, and you know the family's names, they didn't go off into the world and do anything super famous, you know, but locally these families did something that helped make this place what it is today. I think there's something nice about that.
I had an uncle who used to kind of curse his forebears, and he said, they got here, they had the whole continent. Yeah. All the way to California. They said, no, we'll just stay here in North Mountain. We'll just stay here.
Yeah. I mean, but that's a good point, though. Like, mountains are tough to live in. Mm-hmm. I lived in the Poconos for 1 year, and I wanted to blow my head off. I mean, it was just because it's in the winter. I hate winter to begin with. But one of the reasons I hate winter is because it gets dark so early, and I was on the eastern side of the mountain, so I was in the shadows, and it was earlier. It would get darker earlier, and then the wind whistling through the leafless trees all day long. I mean, it's enough to drive you insane. There's no vista. You can't see anything because there's another mountain.
Mountain there.
And
West Virginia's zone like Florida. You know, it's too flat.
Well, not in the mountains.
No. When you go to Florida, you're it's flat.
No, that's an extreme. Or the plains, like that's too much of an extreme. But like, so it's a tough life. Like those people that they probably got sick of climbing over whatever mountains they went over, and they said, "This is enough. This looks like a nice little gorge. We're going to build our house here and see what we could do.
Got limestone ground here. We'll stay here." Yeah. But it's of course, it's changing a lot now. A lot of the families that have been there, like my family, has been there since the 1770s in that general area. And some of them went as far as Romney, where they got the Union Army burned them out later on at a place called Frenchburg. But you know, they're scattered all over the United States. But they've been there, and a lot of the other families have been there since the 1770s, 1800s. But those families are slowly dying out, or they're the children are moving for better jobs, and so of course there's a lot of good jobs there now. But the influx of people coming out now because of a lot of federal jobs, and of course
trains bring them. You got the commuter lines out.
The commuter line going to
I know
big industry.
Harper's Ferry. I love Harper's Ferry. I love going there, but the property values there are insane.
Way up.
And it's that commuter line. Yeah. I was down there a couple months ago, and we stayed at a B&B, and we were talking to the owner, and he was saying, especially since COVID, and people were like, "Get me out of the cities."
And they can work from home.
And if they need to get into the office, they can hop on the train.
Get there.
And it was cheaper out there, and then they've made it insane. Have you seen what they're doing at Hilltop House?
Yes.
I mean, it's going to be like a whole complex, but it's we went to their website and we were reading it, and I'm like, okay, so this is all about retreats for the DC types. Like, it's no average person is going. No. Harper's Ferry is going to be lost to us all of us normies. You know, we're not going to. We'll be able to pass through it, but we won't be able to afford to stay and have a meal. Yeah, it's going to be sad. But that's they call that progress. I guess that's the way. You know.
But, Since the virus, you've had this influx of people that can work from home. They can sell their property in a metropolitan area, let's say for $600,000. Right. They can come to West Virginia and buy a couple acres with a house for $300,000. Yeah. And they got $300,000. I met a man at I was on jury duty 3 or 4 years ago. He was 80-some years old. He said, "I don't have to be here, but I've never been on jury." But he was from New York City. Okay. And he had a job up there, a nice house and stuff. But he said he studied plants. He wanted to farm. And he said he sold his property in New York City and bought a nice property near where I live with plenty of room for his gardening and stuff for 1/5 the price.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Had a townhouse or something, New York City.
That's crazy.
Row house, whatever. And
Wow.
he knows his vegetables and plants. He's got a good garden.
It's a beautiful area, though. I always, every time I go down there, I always say when I make my 5th million off of this show, I'm still waiting to make the first. But if I ever make the 5th, I'm going to buy a place right on top of the mountain behind Hilltop House. But by then, it'll be a $5 million home, so I won't be able to do it. But it's a beautiful area. And you go up on Bolivar Heights, and, it's just so pretty up there. I like being on top of the mountain. Mm-hmm. It's down in the valley or on the mountainside. That's where I kind of get I feel confined, But it's a beautiful state. We went to Morgantown not too long ago, and that's a beautiful drive out that way. West Virginia's a great town.
What you need to do sometime is to take Route 50.
Okay.
And head from Winchester to Parkersburg.
So just the old roads. Yeah.
The Northwestern Turnpike. That's the Civil War Road.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
Civil War
50. That's the one that goes into Virginia all the way over to D.C., isn't it? Yeah.
But it was originally from Winchester to Parkersburg to connect Western Virginia.
Okay.
And it was a Virginia-sponsored project.
And that's what they wanted money back for. I would love to do that. I mean, I love off the interstate stuff. And that was, we were just saying this the other day. We were going to Carlisle to meet friends for dinner, and we were stuck behind this person who refused to even go the speed limit, right? And there's no passing from here to there, okay, on the Carlisle Road. And so and I'm going insane. I'm yelling, I'm flailing my arms, but like it's going to do anything. And I said to my girlfriend, I go, there was once a time where there were no interstates. So this is how you traveled. So could you imagine if we were traveling to like upstate New York right now, and we don't know how long this bastard's going to be in front of us, and we've got to sit behind him.
We used to go to Front Royal to see my mother's relatives, and down 11 or up 11. It was all day.
Yeah, yeah.
It was all day.
Yeah.
You get there, you spend an hour, you come back.
Yeah. And from Martinsburg, this you're saying?
From Berkeley Springs.
From Berkeley Springs, which is not far, right? Yeah. I mean, today.
Well,
what would you do today? How would you get there today?
From where I live about halfway between Berkeley Springs and Martinsburg. I'd go to Martinsburg and then up 81.
Right.
So you're talking 45 minutes.
Right, exactly. 81 makes all the difference.
You have to go through Martinsburg down on 11. You have to go through Bunker Hill. And through Winchester, and then you're back through Middletown and all that.
It must have seemed, as a kid, it must have seemed like it was so far away.
It's all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just go to see her for an hour and you got to go back.
And then you get back in Carmel.
What a nightmare. Steve, thank you very much for coming on and doing this.
Thank you for inviting me.
You taught me something new, which is nice. I always like that. I hope the audience learned something new as well. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you get a chance, go visit Harper's Ferry before it becomes unaffordable to even spend the day in.
Visit Martinsburg. There's a lot of things in town,
Martinsburg too, yeah. Actually, I mean, just go down 81. There's a lot of cool places. Martinsburg. Is there anything to see at Bunker Hill?
The old churches in the fighters.
There you go. Okay. And then you can get down to Winchester. Beautiful drive if you haven't done it.
It's been known in the past for exotic dancers in Bunker Hill.
Bunker Hill?
That's
really?
That's
okay.
It went from Civil War combat to exotic dancing. So.
Wow. My, how the mighty have fallen. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh. Berkeley Springs is a beautiful town, says one of the listeners.